This is The Download from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week and why it matters to the people in the business of podcasting. I'm Newton Shuttlecotty.
And I'm Gavin Gaddis.
The Download is brought to you by Podscribe. Find out more at podscribe.com.
This week, new Sounds Profitable research into the news podcast consumer, a recap of On Air Fest 2025, podcasting solutions for subscriber churn, updates to YouTube, and an Australian audio roundup. Let's get started. This Wednesday from Tom Webster at Sounds Profitable, a new report sponsored by NPR has debuted in the Sounds Profitable educational series. The news podcast consumer is built from data collected from the podcast landscape, the industry's largest publicly available survey of podcasting, with 5,071 Americans aged 18 plus surveyed. News continues to ride high, ranking the second most consumed genre in podcasting among respondents, with 31% consuming at least one news podcast in the last month. The demographics breakdown shows news fans tend to be affluent, highly educated, and are more likely to be business decision makers than non-news consumers. 74% of news fans listen weekly and prove to be evangelists for podcasts. Chief among the evidence for that evangelism is their propensity for co-listening. 67% of non-news consumers rarely or never co-listen to podcasts with other people. For news consumers, that drops to 56%, with 30% of respondents occasionally co-listening and 14% of them co-listening at least most of the time. News listeners tend to trend younger than most of the general podcast listeners and highly likely to be commuters, all of which makes news consumers a kind of force multiplier for podcasting, as they're both passionate about the content and they're sharing it around.
This Wednesday, from Gavin Gaddis at Sounds Profitable, last week, WorkX-Works' 9th On Air Fest took place in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, bringing together all walks of podcasting. Gaddis covered the event while also interviewing Sounds Profitable partners using a uniform set of questions to collect opinions about why brands should care about podcasting. Things kicked off with a keynote panel in the newly added XXV space, featuring an interview with independent journalist Taylor Lorenz, discussing the creator economy and her experience since going fully independent. A quote from Gaddis, quote, "Looking at the Lorenz panel through a business of podcasting lens, it has never been more viable for journalists to build their own brand outside of whatever outlet they work for, which means they're all the more available to put the legwork in on outlet-agnostic investigative podcasts that'll be in need of sponsors and producers," end quote. Sessions throughout On Air Fest were packed to the brim with creatives and business of podcasting folks alike. From a main hall discussion of a woman racing a horse, to an intimate cinema conversation about investigative journalists covering their own families, every session Gaddis poked their head into at least reached standing room, if not outright getting closed up due to maximum capacity. A quote from the article, quote, "On Air Fest has carved out a place for creative leadership to gather every year, a place to gather and take stock of where we're at while making valuable new connections. Podcasting's doing great. Advertisers love us. Video is doing gangbusters. The industry is full of passionate, collaborative people looking to make as many podcasts as the world will watch or listen to. The key will be harnessing that passion and demonstrating to brands outside the world of podcasting we're here and more than ready to work," end quote.
This Wednesday from Sarah Guaglione at Digiday. During last week's On Air Fest session, several different corners of podcasting addressed how they're handling subscriber churn now that premium subscriptions are such a core part of podcasting. One anonymous executive said during a breakout session about churn that their company is pushing internal self-promotion, having podcasts promote other podcasts within the company's umbrella to ensure audience cross-pollination. A quote from the article, quote, "Steve Ackerman, EVP and head of global podcasts at Sony Music Entertainment, said during the session that Sony Music rebranded its true crime podcast bundle offering The Binge last fall, in part to reduce churn. The idea was to make it clear to subscribers all of the content they were getting in the bundle, so that when they subscribed to listen to one podcast, they were aware of the other shows now available to them. The Binge releases a new series every month," end quote. One tactic used by supporting casts that can regain churn subscribers is to automatically turn an expired ad-free subscription feed into a free ad-supported feed that regularly drops mini episodes featuring the host encouraging lapsed subscribers to rejoin for subscriber-only benefits, sometimes even offering a discount as an incentive. There's also the move to make subscription platforms have a free option to act as a one-stop shop that will eventually drive free members to subscribe due to fear of missing out or FOMO, such as Patreon's launch of their free following back in 2023 that now can be leveraged with their autopilot tool to automatically ID potential subscribers and email them with discounted first month offers.
Quite a few new developments at the big red play button. First up, from Ashley Carman last Thursday on Bloomberg, YouTube is planning on adding a cheaper, ad-free version of their paid video service. While the $13.99 a month YouTube Premium subscription will continue to offer a simple ad-free experience across the entire YouTube ecosystem, the planned, quote, Premium Lite tier will cost less and offer an ad-free experience on YouTube uploads that aren't classified as music videos. On Wednesday, Tim Katz, Vice President of Partnerships and Podcasts at YouTube, published an official blog announcing the platform has reached 1 billion monthly podcast users. The continued expansion of podcasting beyond RSS has introduced several analytical terms that mean different things in different spaces. The same terms are used with different definitions and expectations between mediums. We celebrate the success of podcasting on YouTube and now have further prioritized our efforts with our partners to rethink and define how we encompass this wider dataset to prevent confusion in both within podcasting and the wider world. Finally, covered this Wednesday by the Streaming Wars staff, mid-roll ad placement is getting a refresh. Starting May 12th, YouTube will reduce the number of mid-rolls run at disruptive moments, for example, mid-sentence or during an action sequence, pivoting to a system that aims to target pauses and transition moments. This update will retroactively adjust automatic mid-rolls placed in videos uploaded before February 24th. YouTube Studio will also give creators feedback on whether their manually placed mid-roll ad marker placement could be optimized to be less disruptive. An update that will likely improve mid-roll experience in video podcasts, cutting down on the instances of an ad cutting off a host mid-sentence.
A lot has happened in the Australian audio scene this past week, so we're rounding it all up with one mega story. First up, on Monday, the staff at B&T covered ARN's iHeart and Magellan AI's quarterly report of the top 15 Australian podcast advertisers. The leaderboard includes names like Squarespace, Shopify, Toyota, Woolworths, McDonald's, and at the top sits Airbnb. The report also bestows the Australian Agency of the Quarter award to the agency that spent the most in the Australian podcast industry, as far as it is tracked by Magellan AI. This time around, Q4's award goes to Essence Mediacom Australia, Sydney. And audio advertising continues to grow across the country, with broadcaster ARN Media reporting a 9% increase in revenue, reaching 365.6 million AUD for 2024. Southern Cross Austereo, SCA, also reports strong performance, clocking 5.3% overall revenue lift year over year. IAB Australia has published their Q4 internet advertising revenue report, which also finds audio advertising grew 17.8% in the country last year, reaching 313 million AUD. In addition, IAB Australia has also published the Audio Buyer's Guide, which includes a crash course in podcast terminology and data backing up its growing popularity. Finally, it's time for our quick hits. These are articles that didn't quite make the cut for today's episode for full coverage, but they're still worth including in your weekend reading. Here's what I got for you this week. Amplitude Media Partners is looking to represent more independent creators across YouTube and podcasting with a specific but not limited interest in tech, business, and finance. Wondercraft launches Remix to help fix your existing audio ads. This is an animated debut of the Remix tool, which gives creative teams the ability to have granular control over audio they don't have stems for by using AI to recreate the stems. How Podcasting Reaches $5 Billion by Stephen Goldstein, a conversation with Cumulus Media Insights Chief Officer Pierre Bouvard about how podcasting can reach the next earnings milestone. Why BBC Podcasts are moving to its website and app outside of the UK by George Cesali. In a move to bring more BBC Studios content worldwide, BBC.com and the BBC app now have a section of curated audio content specifically chosen for global audiences. Podcast Business Journal, Rocky Thomas, an interview with Chief Strategy Officer at SoundStack, Rocky Thomas. And finally, a marketing briefing from Digiday Inside the Evolution of Celebrity Brand Partnerships by Christina Monlos. As the standard celebrity endorsement fades from the spotlight, agencies are focusing more on authenticity in their celebrity-driven campaigns, which is excellent news for podcasting as authenticity is kind of our thing.
And that was The Download, brought to you by Sounds Profitable. I know we went through today's stories fast, so be sure to check out the links to every article mentioned right in your podcast listening app or on the download section of soundsprofitable.com. And thank you for sticking with us as we bring you the top stories you might have missed from the past week. I'm Newton Shuttlecotty.
And I'm Gavin Gaddis. Our producers are myself, Newton Shuttlecotty, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. Special thanks to you for listening to The Download. We'll see you next week. Robot?
Download complete.